Rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Him Korsaran. On the show today, after surviving the shocking assassination bid, Donald Trump has officially been nominated by the Republican National Convention, and he has now named JD Vance, a Republican U.S. Senator from Ohio, as his running mate. We'll bring you all the details of this on the show today.
Also on World DNA, Joe Biden is back in campaigning mode, once again defending himself on questions over his mental acuity. Biden says, "My mental acuity has been pretty damn good," and that he has got more done in his time in office than any other president. Stay tuned for that full report right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
It is my honor to nominate Donald J. Trump for the office of President of the United States.
The Republican Party officially nominates former President Donald Trump to run again for the White House at the start of the party's national convention in Milwaukee.
New Hampshire proudly cast all 22.
Donald Trump selects JD Vance, a Republican U.S. Senator from Ohio, as his running mate, elevating a politician who once criticized the former president in acid terms, but has since become one of his most stalwart defenders.
Thousands of demonstrators marched through the streets of Milwaukee to protest against the Republican National Convention. Many marchers chanted and held signs condemning former President Donald Trump and his policies.
Over 48 hours since the assassination bid on Trump, the Secret Service and local police trade blame over the rooftop security, even as the agencies scramble to find out the attacker's motive.
Joe Biden defends his decision to stay in the U.S. presidential race despite concerns about his age. In an interview with NBC, Biden claims his mental sharpness is pretty damn good.
Israel strikes the southern and central Gaza Strip to put more pressure on Hamas following a weekend strike targeting the militant group's leadership, which killed scores of Palestinians who had sought shelter in a makeshift camp.
Yemen's Houthis claim they targeted 3 vessels, including an oil tanker, in the Red and Mediterranean seas with ballistic missiles and drones. And before we go on any further, there you can see these are the live visuals that we're getting from Milwaukee on your screens right now. You can see Donald Trump after surviving a horrific assassination attempt. You can see the bandage on his ear as well. That's where the bullet grazed past Donald Trump.
To elect Donald J. Trump as the next president of the United States.
This is Trump's third consecutive run since 2016. He has officially been named by the Republican National Convention. He's been nominated.
You will not take
course, shaking hands with Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, his son standing behind him. Of course, surrounded by all Republican. And there he is, standing next to his running mate, JD Vance.
Across the plains of Texas.
Former President Donald Trump has arrived at the Republican National Convention after he and his running mate JD Vance were earlier formally nominated as the Grand Old Party ticket for the 2024 presidential election. This comes just 2 days after Trump survived an assassination attempt. Being greeted by a huge ovation there. This is his third consecutive run for the presidential post.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Professor James A. Russell, who's an associate professor at the Department of National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School. He's joining us from Monterey, California. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, my first question to you is, opinion polls still suggest a close race between Trump and Biden after all that has transpired in the past few days. How close do you feel the race will be?
Well, one of the something that I'm sure your viewers must understand is that the American system for electing presidents is not based on the popular vote, but is based instead on the votes within individual states. So the answer to your question about the closeness of the race, what it comes down to essentially is how these candidates do, and I'm going to say 5 or 6 swing states. And those states are Pennsylvania, they're Nevada, they're Arizona, for example. Virginia is always also a close state. Florida used to be a swing state. Colorado is another one. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. All of these states, for example, are going to determine who gets the electoral college, that is to say, the system that we have in the United States to elect our presidents. A system, I should hasten to add, that was really designed in the 19th century when America was trying to keep the Union together, and gave more power to the former states of the Confederacy. So this is the answer to the question, which is that it comes down to how the election goes in these 5, 6, 7 states.
In these swing states. I get your point. Yes, Professor Russell, now Trump has announced his running mate. Of course, that's JD Vance. He's standing right there next to Mr. Trump at the RNC. Now, he was a self-styled never-Trumper, that these are his words, and had once compared Trump to Hitler as well. How do you assess their partnership in the current race?
Well, this is a pretty common phenomenon, I would say, which is that 5, 6 years ago, you had Elise Stefanik, who is a very high-ranking person in the House of Representatives on the Republican side. There's some similarities here in which the Republicans at that time denounced Trump, said he was an ideologue and an extremist, and then they realized that they had to kind of toe the line, and in part in order to replenish their own campaign coffers. And what Elise Stefanik, of course, discovered is that as soon as she started in with the pro-Trump rhetoric, her campaign coffers went sky high. And of course, money in American politics is regrettably this instrumental feature of those politics, and as in some ways outweighed the importance of parties per se, which is to say that when candidates can become financially independent, that enables them to have more power. And I think Vance is also another classic sort of example of this. Vance comes from out of nowhere. He's running in a crowded Senate sort of race. He openly embraces Trump, and Trump sort of helps him through the crowded Republican field in Ohio to win. And so Vance is a Trump sycophant, like many of the Republicans. The interesting observation I would make today is that the Republican Party today is not really much of a political party anymore. It's a cult of personality. I'm at a loss, for example, to explain to your viewers what exactly the Republican Party stands for anymore, except maybe cutting taxes on the very rich people. In other words, it ceased to have this sort of any degree of coherence, and has instead become defined like by these culturally dissonant issues, like visceral rhetoric directed against immigrants, so on and so forth, people who are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And of course, we see the same phenomenon in varying degrees across the Western democracies, which is to say the rise of this right-wing populist figures that are espousing mostly extremely negative sort of points of view. And so another example in the Republican Party's case is that they want to undermine government institutions. It's one of the contradictions of the whole Trump-Vance sort of candidacy, if you will, is that they're seeking to run the very institutions which they want to tear down.
Professor
it's
Russell,
a very
you spoke about their partnership. Now, I just wanted to also give a little insight into how, or rather, I would ask you to give a little insight into how Trump lost back in 2020, and then I want to share this with you now. His brash, often aggressive behavior and willingness to forego traditional American allies. Now, all this went against him back in 2020. Do you feel that's going in his favor in any capacity this time?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's in many ways it's the most important question, which is to say, how does one explain the dynamism of politics, which is to say the shifts in politics. In the last election, Joe Biden won by 9 million in the popular vote, and easily won in the Electoral College. And yet here we sit 4 years later, in which my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that Biden has actually been a pretty good president. He led the country out of the COVID pandemic. The economy is back growing. We're at full employment. He's tried to reinvigorate America's alliances. In other words, all of these things that were quote unquote wrong with the country when Trump was president the last time around. And yet here we sit 4 years later, and Biden doesn't seem able to make this case that the country is actually in better shape today than it was 4 years ago.
Right, Professor Russell. Sorry to interject there, but just to expand on what Shivan had asked as well, and this is going to be a two-parter, so just stay with me here. I wanted to understand, and I guess elections are largely influenced by voter perceptions and voter sentiments as well. After surviving that assassination bid, we've seen a lot of people come out in support of the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. And at the same time, we have Biden, who's facing questions over his mental acuity, his mental sharpness. How do you think this will impact the elections and voter patterns this time around?
I think there isn't a question. And first, we all have to say at the outset what a horrific event it was. There isn't any other way to describe it. But there is also as you know, you are a television station in the world's largest democracy, and you know the important and the visceral importance of images. And Trump's raised fist with the blood coming out of his ear it has become the defining iconic image of the campaign, of course, and it feeds the Trump, kind of narrative. It's a false narrative, in my opinion, but it's a narrative nonetheless which suggests that he has been victimized and he's being persecuted and he's the underdog, as contrasted to Biden, of course, who, let's be honest about it, Biden should have stepped down 6 months ago, 9 months ago. He's too old to be president. And I don't think there's any other way to sort of state it so clearly. He's too old to be president. I mean, if we look just, for example, all of his frailties and faults have been on display in the war in Gaza, in which he has just appeared to be sort of clueless and not know what to do. And has portrayed weakness.
Yes.
For example, that's just one example. But the contrast between these images of an aging sort of frail octogenarian versus Trump, raising his fist with the blood coming from his ear. It reinforces the narrative and the imagery that it's a false narrative and it's a false imagery. I mean, Trump, for example, likes to talk about the system, quote unquote, being rigged against him, that he's being persecuted by this system, which is arrayed against him, when exactly the opposite is true. The Republicans have stuffed the Supreme Court of the United States and the lower courts with right-wing ideologues.
Professor Russell.
They were just...
Yeah, I just want to interject there. Now, you know those contrasting images that you just spoke about, I just want to bring the focus back there with Trump on one end surviving an assassination bid with his fist in the air, looking rather aggressive, saying he wants to fight. And then, of course, Biden still trying to convince people that he is ready and he's not old enough to not run for the presidential bid yet again. Do you feel the fact that Biden is struggling to convince people is also going in Trump's favor, and all that aggressiveness which went against Trump the last time around is kind of going in his favor this time because Biden is struggling to convince people about his age?
And there can be no question about this.
But then it all comes down to optics, doesn't it? You know, instead of the real issues.
No. Politics, I don't want to say it's all about optics, but it plays an incredibly important role in today's digitized world in which I grew up, for example, in a world where we had people got their news and their images from one news show, the Huntley Brinkley show, for example. That's not true anymore. Today we're in a world today of TikTok, and in other words, the imagery is proceeding, rattling around in the digital space at the speed of light, and from all kinds of different sources, of course. And this imagery that you have cited here, it's a powerful one in the campaign today, and one which is, of course, goes against President Biden, who let's be honest, also the Democratic political leadership has not all, but they have hinted strongly that he needs to step aside for a younger sort of candidate. And they're correct in this, of course. Yeah.
All right. Well, Professor Russell, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights on this. It was great having you on the show with us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we move further from here. Now, amidst the Republican National Convention, the RNC in Milwaukee, and a day after the assassination attempt, we're nearly about 48 hours since that attempt on Donald Trump, US President Joe Biden got back into campaign mode, defending his decision to be in the race.
Right, of course, this is despite calls for him to exit. Now, in an interview to NBC News, Biden said that he's not leaving the race, even though some Democratic leaders have expressed fears that he cannot win. Defending his decision, Biden said that his mental acuity has been pretty damn good. The US president also said that it was a mistake to say that he wanted to put a bullseye on Republican nominee Donald Trump, further clarifying that it was merely a figure of speech and it is Trump himself who has mainstreamed violent rhetoric.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. There's a whole range of things that, look, I've never seen a circumstance where you ride through certain rural areas of the country and people have signs there, big Trump signs with middle signs saying F Biden, and a little kid standing there putting up his middle finger. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that is just inflammatory and a kind of viciousness.
He also criticized US District Judge Imran Khans' decision to dismiss the classified documents case against Trump, calling the ruling. Now, the NBC interview was scheduled before the assassination attempt on Trump and had been a part of the broader strategy to prove his fitness for office after growing concerns amongst Democrats and voters after the uneven and shaky performance at the US presidential debate.
And number two, what happens from here on in terms of the kind of...
The FBI, the Secret Service and law enforcement officials, they're all still investigating the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. But the most pertaining question, of course, still remains unanswered. How did the shooter breach security?
Right, absolutely. That is the big question here. And get to a presidential candidate merely some 400 feet away from where the rally was, just about 100 days before the elections. The Secret Service and the Pennsylvania police continue to relay possible responsibility to each other. The Secret Service is in the eye of the storm as the attack is being seen as a devastating failure of one of the agency's core duties.
The Secret Service operates under the Department of Homeland Security. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, has now admitted that there were failings. Mayorkas has said that gunmen should never have been able to get a direct line of sight to Trump.
Now, the shooter, Thomas Crooks, was killed by members of Secret Service, but not before he fired 8 gunshots at Trump's rallies. Questions are now being raised on the delay in neutralizing the shooter, despite him moving over several rooftops around the campaign venue to take aim.
You want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Eyewitnesses present at the rally claimed that they did see a man with a rifle on a nearby roof just moments before Donald Trump was shot. In fact, one person alerted the police and the Secret Service agents beforehand before Trump continued with his speech. Based on the footage, it is estimated that law enforcement had 2 minutes to stop Crooks from the moment he was spotted.
It has also now emerged that the roof of the building where Crooks was positioned was identified as a vulnerability by the Secret Service just days before the event. The building is owned by a glass research company and is next to the Butler Farm show venue where the rally was held. Sources have said that the Secret Service was aware of the risks associated with it.
The Secret Service says it relied on local police to secure the outer perimeter. The agency has maintained that this is the standard practice for such events. It has blamed local police for the failure to secure the roof or post someone on the building. According to reports, the agents did not sweep the building but relied on local law enforcement to secure the location.
The use of local officers has been questioned by lawmakers as they may not have the same training as the Secret Service. And reports say a policeman did spot Crooks before the attack but failed to stop him. The shooter aimed his rifle at the officer, forcing him to back down. Officials have said that he was gripping the edge of the roof and could not reach his gun when Crooks aimed at him. But local officials have continued to assert that the authority and responsibility for securing the area was essentially with the Secret Service. A Pennsylvania state police official has said that the Secret Service always has the lead on securing an event like this. Richard Goldinger, the district attorney for Butler County, has also insisted that Secret Service agents are to blame for Crooks being able to fire at Trump. He said the agency ran the show and they were the ones who were designated to ensure Trump's safety. Goldinger said the entire rally was under the jurisdiction of the Secret Service.
A Republican Party-led House of Representatives panel has called upon the director of the Secret Service, we're talking about Kimberly Seattle, to testify on the 22nd of July. Calls demanding the resignation have been surfacing since the attack.
And more. The RNC has also been previous experience.
Approximately 130 yards from his target on a rooftop, that's about 400 feet, a 20-year-old gunman fired multiple shots with an AR-style rifle in a failed assassination attempt against former U.S. President Donald Trump.
He was identified by the FBI as Thomas Matthew Crooks, and here's what we know about him. Crooks hailed from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, a relatively affluent, predominantly white suburb of Pittsburgh, located about 42 miles away from Butler, where the assassination attempt took place on Trump. The Allegheny County voter records listed Crooks as a registered Republican, but interestingly, at 17, a few years ago, Crooks did make a contribution to Act Blue, a political action committee that raises money for Democratic candidates. So while Trump's shooter was registered Republican, he also turned out to be a Democrat donor in the past. Not just that, Crooks worked as a dietary aide at Bethel Park Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center and was responsible for delivering food to the facility's residents.
Now, the shooter graduated in 2022 from Bethel Park High School. The ceremony posted online shows him with glasses and a black graduation gown and posing with a school official. He was handed a $500 National Math and Science Initiative Star Award during his graduating year as well.
Crooks allegedly had a penchant for camo outfits and video games. His classmates identified him as a loner while delving into his past and the personality that he had. According to half a dozen former classmates, Crooks was rejected from his high school's rifle club. He was told not to return due to, quote-unquote, what a bad shot he was.
I didn't have any interaction with him, but he was like a kid that was always alone. He was always bullied every day. He was just an outcast.
While he carried out one of the most high-profile shootings, Crooks wore a grey T-shirt with an American flag purchased from the popular YouTube firearms channel Demolition Ranch. Eyewitnesses spotted him moving across the roof before positioning himself to fire at Trump while he was speaking. All right, with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. We will be back on the other side. 4 Indian soldiers. We bring you this complete report on 4 Indian soldiers who have been killed in action after an encounter which broke out at Jammu and Kashmir's Doda district. Also on the other side, the tussle is on between Pakistan's coalition government and Imran Khans PTI party. Stay tuned for that complete report when we are back.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved. 61 people are confirmed dead and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One. The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up for you on this side of the show. Let's get started with the headlines first.
Honor to nominate Donald J. Trump for the office of President of the United States.
The Republican Party officially nominates former President Donald Trump to run again for the White House at the start of the party's national convention in Milwaukee.
Donald Trump selects JD Vance, a Republican U.S. Senator from Ohio, as his running mate, elevating a politician who once criticized the former president in acid terms but has since become one of his most stalwart defenders.
Thousands of demonstrators marched through the streets of Milwaukee to protest against the Republican National Convention. Many marchers chanted and held signs condemning former President Donald Trump and his policies.
Over 48 hours since the assassination bid on Trump, the Secret Service and local police trade blame over the rooftop security, even as the agencies scramble to find out the attacker's motive.
Joe Biden defends his decision to stay in the U.S. presidential race despite concerns about his age. In an interview with NBC, Biden claims his mental sharpness is pretty damn good.
Israel strikes the southern and central Gaza Strip to put more pressure on Hamas following a weekend strike targeting the militant group's leadership, which killed scores of Palestinians who had sought shelter in a makeshift camp.
Yemen's Houthis claim they targeted 3 vessels, including an oil tanker in the Red and Mediterranean seas, with ballistic missiles and drones.
At least 4 people are killed, multiple others wounded in a shooting near a mosque in Oman's capital.
Italy's Mount Etna spews red-hot lava and plumes of smoke rise skywards as one of the world's most active volcanoes erupt on Monday night.
Spanish men's football team are basking in the glory of their European triumph. Alvaro Morata and company take out a victory parade on the streets of Madrid. At least 4 Indian soldiers have been killed in action after encounter broke out at Jammu and Kashmir's Doda district.
The soldiers succumbed to their injuries after they were critically injured following heavy gun battle, while few others remain injured.
Now, according to the preliminary information, the Indian Army launched intelligence-based operation as terrorists opened fire on Indian Army troops. A joint operation was launched by Indian Army and J&K Police. The contact was established at 9 p.m. local time in the north of Doda. Indian Army has moved additional troops to the encounter site as the operation continues. Search to find terrorists was suspended overnight and resumed again this morning.
Several terrorist attacks have taken place in the vicinity of Doda and Kathua in recent months. These deadly terror attacks have led to the deaths of several Indian troops, forcing the Indian security establishment to adopt new approaches to stop cross-border infiltration and ambushes. The tussle is on between Pakistan's coalition government and Imran Khans' PTI party. Leaders of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf have lashed out at the ruling coalition for trying to ban the party.
Jailed former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's aide Zulfikar Bukhari said that the government's decision to ban the political party shows that there is an undeclared martial law in the country.
So hence this has caused no worry to PTI. It is only demonstrated of what we have been trying to say earlier, that there is absolute fascism in Pakistan. There is an undeclared martial law in Pakistan.
Earlier on Monday, the government addressed a press conference announcing their decision to ban Khan's party based on charges against PTI and riots by party's leadership last year targeting military installations.
Keeping in view all the evidence and other things, the federal government will move to ban PTI. We are going to ban Tehreek-e-Insaf. Keeping in view the legal flaws in the judgment, the government and its coalition parties have decided to file a review petition against this judgment.
The move comes on the heels of Pakistan Supreme Court's relief to the PTI in the reserved seats case. The top court in its verdict said the party is eligible for 23 extra reserved seats in Parliament, in addition to over 80 seats PTI secured in the February 8th elections. In February, the party's candidates contested general polls as independents after the party was barred from elections.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court's verdict, PTI was set to emerge as the single largest party in the National Assembly until the latest development.
We would also like to clarify to our viewers that the ban does not take effect immediately. Both sides are expected to approach the Supreme Court, following which the case will be heard before a court ruling on the party's legitimacy.
Once a booming industry synonymous with breakneck growth, China's e-commerce is facing a period of significant change now.
From rising competition, shrinking profits to the impact of generous customer return policies, we'll explore all the reasons behind the slowdown. Take a look at our next report.
Chinese e-commerce vendors are grappling with survival as sales growth slows and price pressures rise. Once marked by shopping extravaganzas with celebrities, the sector is now feeling the pinch of a sluggish economy. Profit margins are shrinking not only for giants like Alibaba and JD.com, but also for thousands of small businesses that thrived during the e-commerce boom starting in 2013. The industry, which accounts for 27% of retail with 12 trillion yuan in annual sales, is now experiencing single-digit growth, according to Euromonitor. Vendors are raising concerns about the cost of aggressive sales tactics and rising return rates. This issue is particularly severe in categories like apparel, where at least 2/3 of sold items are returned, and sellers bear the two-way courier costs. These policies, popularized by platforms like Pinduoduo, are hurting small vendors who often have to sell at a loss to stay visible in search results amid numerous discount events. High traffic acquisition costs and the expense of collaborating with influencers add to the challenges for e-commerce retailers. Many vendors on Pinduoduo have been operating at a loss for 2 years, pressured by factories selling directly to consumers at lower prices. Experts highlight the Nijuan effect, where intense competition yields diminishing returns. With no growth in customer numbers and stagnant average incomes, fierce competition among platforms and sellers has become the new normal for China's e-commerce industry. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
All right, now we are looking at the surge in the stock of Donald Trump's media company after the failed assassination attempt on the former president over the weekend.
Of course, that boosted momentum for the so-called Trump trade across markets, and Trump Media and Technology Group, which made its debut earlier this year, surged as much as 50% to the highest since June 10th. Other stocks, including those of private prison companies and cryptocurrency miners that were expected to gain from the Republicans' re-election, also surged.
According to data from Predicted, after the shooting at his Pennsylvania rally on Saturday, the Republican candidate's odds of getting re-elected rose. Trump Media stock has been in a wild ride since its March debut as investors have responded to President Joe Biden and Trump's fluctuating probabilities of winning the presidential race. Trump's Truth Social media website, that was founded in response to his ban from major sites following the 2021 Capitol riot, is run by the same corporation in which the former president has a controlling share.
Matthew Tutel, Chief Executive Officer at Tutel Capital Management, said it's all about the Trump trade right now, quote unquote, since Trump Media stock is often referred to as the direct Trump trade by investors. He added that the reaction in the stock price is predictable. Now, industries that were expected to gain from another Trump administration saw their stock rise. The gun industry stocks, private prison business shares and crypto surged on Monday. The upsurge in Bitcoin's value was good news for crypto-related stocks like Coinbase Global and miners like Marathon Digital Holdings. The health insurance market increased as a result of optimism about the prospect of looser regulations under the Trump administration. Among the top gainers in the S&P 500 following Elon Musk's endorsement of Trump was Tesla.
In the options market, investors are also betting in favor of Trump's media empire stocks to gain even further after the Monday's significant surge. On the other hand, shares of solar energy companies fell as Democrats are perceived to be more supportive of the sector. Market bets clearly show the failed assassination attempt on the former president as a boost to his chances of winning the White House.
All right, over to technology next. According to reports, Lazarus, a North Korean hacking group, used a major Cambodian payments firm to send stolen crypto to a wallet. Payments firm WION Pay received over $150,000 in crypto between June 2023 and February this year. The crypto was sent to WION Pay from an anonymous digital wallet that, according to blockchain analysts, was used by Lazarus hackers. Reportedly, the hackers deposited funds stolen from 3 crypto companies, mostly via phishing attacks. According to the United Nations, cryptocurrency allows North Korea to find a way around international sanctions, all owing the country to pay for banning goods and services. WION has put out a statement saying the company did not know the funds it had received were from the Lazarus group. Meanwhile, Cambodia's central bank has said it is drafting regulations to identify and punish the use of crypto for illegal activities, including fraud, money laundering, and cyber security threats.
A prototype prosthetic foot has been unveiled by the Italian Institute of Technology. This robotic soft foot simulates the flexibility and waterproof traits of a real human foot. This could be a game changer for people with limb loss and for future humanoid robots. Called the Soft Foot Pro, the bionic foot is designed for uneven and slippery terrains. It provides improved balance for users. While these designs provide stability, they often lack adaptability to changes in terrain and posture, such as kneeling or bending. The foot has no motors or electrical parts, making it waterproof and also suitable for outdoor use on various terrains.
This exclusive Lamborghini Sterato whipping around the racetrack is running on synthetic fuel made from air and water. UK-based company Zero plans to power a Formula One team with this more environmentally friendly fuel. The move aligns with Formula One's aim of going carbon neutral by 2030. Zero has a plant in Oxfordshire where it manufactures the fuel. The process involves extracting carbon dioxide from the air and hydrogen from water using renewable energy. These elements are combined to create carbon monoxide, which is then processed to make the synthetic fuel. The company predicts that the synthetic fuel will initially be 4 to 5 times more expensive than traditional fuels, but the cost is expected to drop significantly over the next 10 years.
All right, on to what's making headlines in the world of sport now. Spain's men's football team is basking in the glory of their European triumph. Alvaro Morata and company celebrated with the fans by taking out Victory Parade through the streets of Madrid in an open-top bus. Luis de la Fuente's